So hello everyone, welcome to the RGSU Town Hall. Today we will answer the questions of graduate students about the RGSU fee, and we'll also answer some of the questions that students submitted on the Google form that was available online for the ones who couldn't attend the session today. So we'll start by introducing the RGSU team. My name is Angelique Bernabe. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Economics, and I am the president of the RGSU.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Fairworn. I'm a PhD candidate in biomedical physics, and I am the Vice President of Operations and Finance of the RGSU.
Hey everyone, my name is Amber Grant. I'm a PhD candidate in the Environmental Applied Science Management Program and the VP Education and Research for the RGSU.
Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Cassie. I'm the Vice President of Student Life and Events for the RGSU, and I'm currently a Master of Nursing student.
Okay, so we'll start by explaining first, what is the RGSU's mission statement? So we would like to jump on explaining. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Okay, so we're the Ryerson Graduate Student Union. We're hoping to have an official recognized union for graduate students run by graduate students to kind of replace what the RSU is doing and to improve upon it. We're incorporated now, so we're not just a group of people, we're a corporation. And we also have just been approved to go to referendum, and that's kind of what this town hall is all about, the upcoming election to choose whether the RGSU will be the new graduate student union or graduate student governing organization.
Yes, and just to add to that, we are incorporated as a not-for-profit, just so everyone knows. And at the end, we're just seeking full official status and officially representing the graduate students, as we've already been representing graduate students, but we want to be the official union on campus for graduate students. And that's what is the RGSU referendum fee, is that currently all students pay a fee to the RSU. And what we're asking is that that fee will be paid to the RGSU and not to the undergraduate union anymore. So then graduate students could collect the fee and make decisions on their own with the money collected from graduate students.
Yeah, and just to further that, I think just to highlight like a couple of the important parts around this is that the RSU is representing graduate students, in particular full-time graduate students, for since I guess graduate students kind of started coming to Ryerson, so many years. But there's been only 2 seats for graduate students on the RSU's board of directors out of approximately a 45-seat board. So what that looks like when there's any sort of decision being made on campus related to graduate student affairs, it's really difficult to pass through a predominantly undergraduate board of directors, just because they don't necessarily understand like the complexities of graduate needs and affairs. So that's been difficult. And then just in terms of also having a budget, I know the fees is this referendum, so essentially going into it as a fees-based referendum. And obviously that can be, especially in the midst of a pandemic, can seem a little bit alarming, and I recognize that. But I think something that's important to focus here is that graduate students have been paying the RSU upwards of $300,000 in fees, since graduate students have been on campus, and each year receive between as little as $20,000 worth of that money to as high as $80,000. So a lot of that extra money has been going straight towards undergraduate initiatives, and we're hopefully, trying to change that and making sure that all of the graduate students' money that's comes into, goes directly towards graduate students managing those funds rather than undergraduate students.
Thank you. So is there any questions so far about the RGSU's mission or what we're trying to accomplish here? So any clarifying question, you can just ask them, unmute your mic or write them in the chat box. Okay, amazing. So let's get started with some of the questions that you may have and we already received on our Google form. So we'll start with the questions from the attendees today. Okay, and I'll get my list of questions that we prepared from the Google form. Is it? Perfect. Okay, so a question that we had from many graduate students is that, as you've noticed the question, not only you're voting on the RGSU referendum fee as the RGSU fee, which will be the money that directly goes to the RGSU for planning activities, as well as providing research, travel grants, support grants for graduate students. So that fee is what will replace the RSU fee. And you have another option, the opt-in or opt-out health and dental plan that will be up to $650. So many questions that we received were, will the new health and dental plan cost me $650? So anyone wants to take that question? And
yeah, I'm happy to speak to it.
thank you.
Yeah, so no, the referendum question as it's written is the new health and dental plan could cost up to, underline up to $650, so it would be a maximum of that. However, working really hard to obviously get to receive the lowest price possible, understanding that you know, graduate students don't want to be spending all their money on a new health and dental plan. But recognizing that they also want good coverage. So a few ways in which we're doing this is moving away from the current model that the RSU has. So the RSU uses a broker rather than a non-for-profit health-based structure. And that ends up costing more money upfront because they're paying not just the insurer for the cost, but also a broker as well. So our plan is to use firstly a non-for-profit insurer, and you know, to lower those brokerage fees to $0. So that's the first way we're planning to save money. The second way is by partnering with other organizations. So QP 3904 Unit 3 has agreed to partner with the Graduate Students Union to help lower that overall cost, and also therefore have like a joint more detailed comprehensive health benefits plan rather than what QP 3904 currently offers TAs and GAs, which is a health spending account, which isn't inclusive of all folks and also doesn't really offer much coverage in its current form. It's $350 for TAs and GAs, and it's based on a first come first served basis, so that pool of money can easily dissolve. So what the RGSU and QP 3904 are doing is teaming up and bringing both pools of money that we have for this together to lower that overarching fee, and hopefully again, you know, provide you with better health and dental coverage. The two main things that we've heard from students as well is that they want better, based on a survey that we did, is that they want better mental health coverage off campus in particular, as well as better dental coverage. So that's another thing that we're certainly hoping to include within the plan, and what will include, considering folks want that, but also we plan to do a more extensive survey as well with our members to see what it is exactly that they would like. It's really important to underscore here too that this plan is certainly still in negotiations, so nothing has been agreed upon, and we're you know, willing to share preliminary plans with folks to see what people would actually like as well. So understanding that our membership base is quite a bit smaller than the RSUs, things like this are a little bit more possible too. So that's the brief kind of answer, but yeah, we have to have essentially in terms of the referendum question, we have to have that maximum number written into the question. Otherwise, it's like that's basically the number that gets passed and can never change. So if we put it at $400, you know, in the future, it could never be more than $400. So we have to like take into consideration the longevity of the union as well. And, you know, assume that, you know, several years down the line, people are still going to have to be negotiating health plans and will need that wiggle room as well. So hopefully that helps answer that question for folks.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add to that, I think for sure when we see the bulk part of 650, it might sound like a large number, but I've been using the RSU plan for now 5 years, which tells you what year I'm in my PhD, hopefully the last. I've noticed that every year I would actually spend more than $500 on some of the services that are not included in the RSU plan. So at the end, I will pay much more than $650 for my my health and dental in general yearly, because I have more needs as a graduate student.
And just to put that in perspective, our maximum increase, and we're trying, as we said, not to have a health insurance charge of $650, but at its maximum, that $650 is only $314 more than you were paying. So if Angelique on the current plan is already spending $500 extra, even this increase will be a lower amount of money than she would have been spending regularly.
Yeah, and I see there's another question here from Siddharth that says, do negotiations for graduate student benefits with the school begin only once official representation is conferred to the RGSU post-referendum? And then the second part of that question is, will these benefits be coordinated with CUPE under a harmonized set of fees? So the answer to your first question is, yeah, technically, official negotiations can only happen once the RGSU has given notice to the RSU that we're leaving their health plan. So we haven't given that official notice because we're not fully incorporated, or not, sorry, that's the wrong word. We're not recognized by the graduate students on campus yet to be the official representation. Technically right now, graduate students are still represented by the RSU. So once, you know, pending a successful referendum for us, then we'll give our notice and be able to kind of legally start negotiations. However, I've been doing work for the last year on the health and dental plan to unofficially negotiate a plan, and that's how we've come up with the numbers. So we have drawn up some preliminary plans with some insurers who have been willing to do that for us, but nothing is certainly set in stone, and nothing is actually deemed official. It's all kind of just, this is what it could look like. And then in terms of will these benefits be coordinated with CUPE under a harmonized set of fees? That's a good question. I think the coordination of the benefits is still being you know, ironed out essentially as well, because the plan isn't fully negotiated, but there's two potential options for the RGSU to have their own kind of coordinator to administer the health and dental plan, and for CUPE to have a separate one, or to have one out of house and run under whatever the insurer is to coordinate both sets of benefits on behalf of both organizations. So that again will be something that needs to be negotiated further with CUPE and with the RGSU once post referendum. But good questions.
Thank you for the question. So next in the questions that we received on the Google form were, why are we separating from the RSU? So this one is a bit more of a core question of why we're doing the work we are doing. So I'll start by saying that graduate students are different than undergraduate students in terms of needs. So we just discussed the health plan. So we already have different needs in terms of health, but we also have different needs in terms of academic goals. So most of us, we do more research than courses. So we need more support for research. So research grants, travel grants, as we have to go to conferences as part of our degrees. There is also the problem of representation on the board of directors of the RSU. Like Amber was saying earlier, we only have 2 seats in a board of 45 people. So when we actually have to vote on a graduate matter, sometimes you get at the end of the agenda because it's not the priority of the undergraduate directors, which is understandable, but it's hard for us to be able to be well represented on the board and in the union. If we have a success in our referendum, we will have our own board of graduate directors, and all the decision-making process will be much smoother to go through. Another important reason why we want to separate it is financial. We contribute about $300,000 to the RSU every year as graduate students. And the past few years, when I was myself a director on their board, I saw that our budget was about $86,000 per year for graduate student specific grant or initiatives. The rest was going towards undergraduate events where grad students were invited, but they were not necessarily attending. I know for myself, I'm a TA, I'm a GA, and also an instructor in my department. So I wouldn't go to an event with my students. I wouldn't feel comfortable going. I'd rather have events with my peers, other graduate students. And that goes to the last point of a conflict of interest. It happened that some of my students in my courses were also directors on the RSU board. So clearly here we see that there is a problem because we as graduate students work for the university and we are students at the university. But working for Ryerson also means that some of the undergrads are our students. So that's a bit difficult sometimes to navigate the situation. So separating will solve that issue as well. So I don't know if any of the team wants to add to that.
So I just wanted to say one more thing. Those are the great logical points. And I also think there's like a kind of emotional aspect to it too, in terms of community building for graduate students. Without like a lead organization of graduate students leading community building, bringing people in, having people collaborate and talk about just graduate studies or life in general, it's really easy to become isolated in your program, really easy to become isolated in your department and think that the way you do graduate school is the only way that anyone ever does graduate school. And that really closes us off to innovation, to moving forward, to making our programs better, making our like education better. If we can't find other graduate students and talk to them and ask them, how are you doing? What's your research about? What's your grad program like? Do you also have to take 80 billion classes, or are you only taking 2, like those lucky programs out there? So I think the RGSU is a great opportunity to really improve upon some of the community building efforts that have already been happening, but have maybe not been as focused as they could be, as overreaching as they could be, because graduate students aren't the ones organizing and leading them.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. This is so important. I guess I really focus on the, the logical steps, but part of like building community is so important. And
I like the logical stuff. That's great.
That's really what I found at Ryerson. It's a community over the past 5 years. So hopefully we'll have a successful referendum and we'll continue building that community. So next question that we had, why is the fee $24 higher compared to the RSU fee? So if you noticed, the fee for the RGSU is slightly higher by $24 compared to the undergraduate fee, the RSU fee. The RGSU fee is higher. I think that's what I said. So why is that? any of you want to take the question?
I'll do it. So part of it, as we mentioned, is that there are way fewer graduate students than there are undergraduate students on campus. As a lot of people like to say, even though I'm not in economics, I'll use this, economies of scale. But the other part of it is we're hoping to provide things that sometimes do cost a little bit more, but are definitely way more graduate centric. So things like professional travel grants, that would allow you to go to conferences, hopefully with a grant that is your supervisor isn't responsible for, and that is a little bit more open. Also academic travel grants, which we've previously offered, or the RSU has previously offered to help students get to conferences, to help cover some of those sometimes exorbitant fees. And if we can all like push our brain to a non-COVID time, when airplane travel was happening, that was expensive, and we want to be able to cover that for you. We also want to cover equity services and make sure that graduate students have access to those services, and continue on with some of the services already provided, like the Good Food Center and the Sexual Assault Survivor Support Line. And again, we also want to expand on some of these things with the more graduate centric, and that's something that will develop over time. What exactly that will mean for graduate students as more graduate students get involved with the RGSU and we do more surveys and get more opinions, have more town halls. We calculated this budget based on what we think graduate students want and need, and keeping those services that the RSU already provides and making them a little bit more graduate student centric. But this is ultimately going to be a union that continues beyond us, and those budget lines will change a little bit over time as graduate students tell us what they want. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. I think that's really clear why it is slightly higher. We are starting a new organization which will incur some costs, but like I said earlier, the budget that we have access to once the referendum is successful will be much higher than what we have currently at the RSU for graduate students, which means that all grants will have more money, will offer more services, not only travel grants for conferences to present at, but also attending conferences, more support for research, hopefully for research project. So those programs will be growing as we will have more money to target those specific areas. The last question that we have on our Google form was, how can students get involved with the RGSU and how can they contribute? So this video will be on YouTube. So in the link below, in the comment section below, you will have a link to our Google form and you can sign up to help us out. So all the work we're doing today is on a volunteer basis. All the time we invest, all the energy we invest, it's volunteer. So we need more people, we need more help. So if you have some time to help in the coming month, as we'll need to do a lot of outreach, making sure all graduate students know about what's going on, how they can give some input about the health plan, about the way we will be spending the fee. Please fill out the form and we will be in touch with you soon. Is there any other comments from the team for that question?
No, we're looking for anybody who has any extra time.
And wants to be part of the start of the organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's another question here in the chat box as well. So Charlotte briefly mentioned supports alongside the benefits and grants that the union will offer. What other supports, in addition to food security and sexual assault supports for graduate students, do you anticipate funding? So what other supports?
So as I said, we mentioned the two grants, professional and academic. So those are both travel grants, but we're also, as Angelique mentioned, hoping to support some more research-based funding. That's a little bit harder. That will require definitely more input to figure out what research is going on and what that looks like across graduate studies. We're also hoping to provide equity services. So that's for people, for a lot of different groups of people, actually. Hopefully, we can kind of provide support groups and things like that. I'm a little bit less familiar with what this will actually entail. It is not my area of expertise. And that's part of, I'm kind of been doing the budget and I'm in charge of the money, and it's great. And I'm really good at that part. And I work with other graduate students to like, let me know what that service actually is. And I think that's why we need more people involved also in the RGSU, because my background is in physics and I'm great with numbers. I'm not so good at the other stuff. I don't know if anyone wants to pipe in about what equity services are.
Yeah, I think like just to be a little bit more specific, no worries, Charlotte, it's all good. But in terms of like the equity support centers specifically, I think that first and foremost, we need to negotiate more space within either the student center on campus or somewhere outside of that building, if the RSU is unwilling to work with us. So right now the RSU has, I think 6 or 7 different equity centers that have been running quite well for the last number of years. We're interested in continuing to work with them to develop graduate specific programming there. And assuming that they're interested in working with us, then we'll just proceed down that route. But if they're unwilling to work with us, then we'll obviously have to come up with an alternative for graduate students. That's specifically related to equity, but I think like the idea that all 4 of us had when we were putting together, the RGSU is identifying not predominantly that students want access to research support. I think funding is kind of lacking at the university for most students. So I'm trying to not just provide conference support where you have to go and present at a conference, but if you want to, attend a workshop on professional development and stuff without presenting yourself, we want to be able to support that. And hopefully also implement like research specific grants where students, can apply to, in different fields perhaps to do their research. So just an extra grant on campus. But we're certainly open to ideas. I mean, the RGSU is not fully formed yet. So, and our team has been doing kind of more of the hoop jumping and bureaucracy part of navigating, getting incorporated, going through the Board of Governors, like all those kind of policy-based things. But I've been doing this for 3 years, and I'm looking forward to taking a step back and letting someone else come in and actually, kind of shape what it's meant to look like. But yeah, would love to get everyone's feedback on that. And Cyrus, I see your hands raised. So what do you have to say?
Thank you. This is all sounding interesting. So I'm just wondering, are there services or other ongoing or already implemented items that the RSU already has in place that we could dovetail into so that we don't always reinventing the wheel? Because as you know, it takes a lot of energy, especially when you talk about the idea of equity spaces and things like that. And I'm just wondering, and I know there's a separation. That's the main thing. That's why we're having this, is to separate. But because we're still on the same campus, we're not going to another campus. We're still connected by a campus. So it might be good to look at what are those elements that are already in place and services that we could still partner on, rather than go and rebuild it ourselves, right? So that we're not actually expending that much more energy than we need to. That's it. I'm just putting that out as a topic.
No, I fully agree with what you're saying 100%. I think our goal is to partner with not just the RSU, but also CSER as well. So CSER has already been outwardly, publicly has agreed and put out letters of support in terms of our, us coming into being our own organization and things like that. They've agreed to provide us with a student advocate as well for the first year until we, kind of have our wings set in place and are able to do things on our own, but they've been outwardly supportive. So we're certainly looking to create those partnerships so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that's for sure. I think the pandemic has made it a little bit difficult being in an online environment rather to work with teams over at the RSU this year, but I think hopefully in the coming months or into the next round of elections, even with a new slate of folks on both sides, we'll be able to work to create something positive with the RSU well, and namely the equity centers. I think that would be our most area of interest, and that way, and we want to create graduate specific programming, but perhaps like use like their spaces and things like that, obviously with agreeing upon some sort of costing there. But yeah, I fully agree with you.
I just wanted to add on, in our ideal scenario, we work really closely with the RSU, we work really closely with Caesar, we work really closely with Ryerson, and we kind of have this very smooth transition process where hopefully some existing programming can just transfer maybe to our responsibility, or we negotiate some sort of deal. And that's like, we're always thinking about that, and we're always getting questions about that. Part of this referendum is like the next step in our ability to even have a real conversation with the other organizations about what we would be looking for, what we could provide, and that kind of thing. So like Caesar, we've already talked to them about the student advocate and that service, and kind of starting negotiations around that area. And we're thinking Good Food Center already existing. We don't necessarily want to build a new graduate Good Food Center. We can if we have to, but hopefully we can just negotiate. And as Amber said, COVID has made that really difficult, and you can't spontaneously walk by the student center anymore and say, oh, hey, who's around? Well, can we have a chat? So hopefully with the referendum and everything becoming more official, those conversations become more frequent and a little bit more smooth.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with this final step, the RGSU referendum early November. Because starting negotiation just for the health plan or even shared services, we need to know that the referendum is successful. So then we will be the official representation of graduate students on campus. And then we can start sitting with other organizations, with Ryerson, with health plan providers, to know exactly how everything will look like. It's just we are in this gray area where we have some conversations, of course, we started discussing, but we cannot yet sign a formal agreement. But that's something we will get started on as soon as the referendum is successful in November. Okay, so
another question here, yeah. It just says, what will the timeline of the referendum negotiations and outreach for feedback from graduate students be? When should we as students look out for important emails from you in the near future? Angelique, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Sure. So in terms of timeline, the referendum will be from November 2nd to the 5th. So please vote. It's very, very important that you let the university know and the RGSU know what you think of the proposed fee and health plan, and see if the referendum actually passed. So conditional on the referendum being successful, then we will start negotiating with the university for an agreement with Ryerson. That will be a first step. Working on that just after the referendum. So hopefully November, December, we'll be working actively with the university and start conversation with other organizations on campus, such as the RSU, Caesar, and other organizations that we will be negotiating the next steps. January, that's when things are a bit more formalized and we know where we are going. We will be doing a lot of outreach. So also it will be orientation for the incoming grads. So most likely we will put videos out there, drop by orientation, just to let students know that now we need their input. We will have Google Forms for you to tell us what kind of health plan you want to see, what kind of services you want to see. So then we can continue organizing and making everything more formal. Then in February, we'll have our first election for the exec team and the board of directors that will start later that year in summer 2021. So that will be in February, March, while we'll continue formalizing all our agreements and negotiation throughout the winter semester. So that's how it will look like. We will hopefully by then have a mailing list from the university once we are the official representation on campus, and it will be much easier for us to reach out to grad students, as for now we have to go through social media or we have to go to graduate program administrator, as we don't have a mailing list yet. But by then you will receive an email from the RGSU with all the important information and how you can participate in everything we are proposing. Okay, we have one question. As the RGSU connected with the ComCal GSA, there's a lot of support from the ComCal GSA. So yes, part of our outreach team is the ComCal GSA with some of the members that are actively helping us campaigning for this referendum. We do have a WhatsApp chat where we talk on what's going to be the next step, what documents we have, and how we can support the ComCal GSA to do more outreach with their members and making sure everyone knows what is the RGSU and what we are doing. Great. So is there any other question from the attendees? No? Okay. Awesome. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for the ones who are watching our videos, our video after the town hall. Again, if you want to get involved, there is the Google form link below, as well as all our social media. So follow us to get more updates. Thank you.
Love it.